On one of the recent All Saints' Day feasts, the feast that we celebrate today, Pope Benedict said that death deprives us of everything that is earthly except for that special grace of our baptism, by which each Christian participates in the death and resurrection of Christ. To know Jesus is to know the Father, and to know the Father means to enter into real communion with the very origin of life and light. And today we celebrate the feast of the saints who considered their own life here on earth to be nothing compared to the life that is to come, the life that is eternal. And in many cases, they were willing to shed their very blood in order to give testimony to the true life, which is the life of Christ. It was 13 centuries ago, back in the 8th century, that Pope Gregory III created this feast day. He created it in Rome with the martyrs in mind, but he also had a wider celebration in mind. He said that he wanted to include in this all of the saints, even all of the saints, the many saints, the majority of saints, who are not recognized, who do not have a feast day in the regular calendar of the saints. So it was to honor all saints, not just the ones that everybody knew about, in order that Pope Gregory established this feast. It was once the case in Christianity, until not too long ago, that people in a region all knew, or at least knew the legend of a saint from their own area. What a wonderful thing that must have been, to celebrate the life of someone who they knew, at least in reputation, that was one of them, and lived a life similar to the life that they lived. And so they named their communities after those saints, and they named their churches after those saints, because they were one of us, and that gave us hope. It gave us a sense that our lives too can become heroic in virtue and in dedication to God. And people were not ashamed to name their children after those saints. They took that very seriously. They wanted their children to have this powerful, heroic example of the saints. And they wanted their children to be under the spiritual protection, the special guidance of those saints. So people chose those names very carefully. And they chose the name of their church very carefully. And they chose often the name of their city or their town or their community very carefully, and put it under the protection and the guidance and under the inspiration of the great saints. We don't do that anymore. We rarely think of naming our children after saints. It may just happen to befall that happens. But nowadays, the names are so peculiar and so weird that you don't even try to figure out the saint that might have come down with names like this. But at one time, that was important. At one time, the saints were important, and they should be once again. The saints are heroes, and the people that we choose for our heroes nowadays often end up being very flawed and very uninspiring heroes when their life is fully told and exposed. We have people who have won great awards, unfortunately by cheating, who have won great admiration and respect by others, only to find out that they did it through illegal or inappropriate ways. We have people who we honor because of their oddity rather than because of their goodness or their virtue or their holiness. And so we are desperately in need of saints this day, because we're desperately in need of their example for us. People think that in order to be a saint, you have to affect a certain way of speaking, or a certain way of dressing, or you have to walk around with rosary beads around your neck, or something like that. And yet it has little to do with that. The very fact that we celebrate All Saints means we have celebrated people from all walks of life. The rich, the poor, slaves, free people, kings and queens, people who did virtually every profession that you can imagine. People who found the path to holiness, to following Christ, right in the very life that they were leading. But they chose, whatever path they were on, to take the narrow path, the path of virtue. They chose not to take the easy way. They chose not to say, what I'm doing is good enough, but to always hear the command of Christ, almost as their spiritual coach, calling them farther, to do more, to give more, to be more closely conformed in everything we do to the life of Christ. Once again, we need to take the saints seriously. The saints that have recently been recognized in the church give testimony to the fact that people from many different walks of life have found the path to holiness. And they lead us forth. They give us not only an example, but they give us their prayers freely and with love when we ask them. And when we ask them to provide us with an example, they do so willingly. How sad it would be to reject such spiritual help in our lives. So we honor the saints today, but it's not good enough to honor them. We have to embrace them. We have to ask for their help. We have to read about their lives. And we have to try to emulate their courage in practicing their faith each and every day.